Hello everyone, Tony Cottee here. First off, I hope you're all keeping safe and well at this time, managing to cope as lockdown continues. Hopefully we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, and it won't be long before we're all together at the London Stadium, the West Ham family back together to see some football. Now, I'm sure you're all aware that this Sunday, the 10th of May, marks the 40th anniversary of our famous FA Cup final victory over Arsenal. A match I was very fortunate to be at as both a fan and a young schoolboy player at West Ham. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by a man who played a pivotal and very unselfish role on the day in that triumph. A fantastic striker who I was lucky enough to watch closely and learn a lot from as I came through the West Ham ranks. I'm going to introduce you to the one and only Mr. David Cross. David, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks, Tony. How are you?
Well, I'm great, thanks. But more importantly, how are you? It really is difficult times for everyone, isn't it?
Cross gets his first goal for West Ham.
I mean, I don't know about you, Tom, but I mean, you live down there, and you came through the ranks at West Ham from being a young kid. I mean, I remember your very first day in pre-season, the first session, but I came a different route. You know, I came from another club. And for me to play for West Ham was like an honour, really. You know, when I was a kid at 18, just leaving school and then signed as a professional for Rochdale, I never dreamt that I would be a footballer, really. You know, I never thought it would go on that long. But gradually I learned and gradually I moved on. And then for me to play for West Ham was like a big honour, you know. I mean, I walked into the dressing room my first day and I'm sat next to Billy Bonds and opposite Trevor Brooking, you know, and I'm thinking, wow. You know, if anyone had told me this 8 or 9 years ago, I would never have believed them. So, and I never ever really considered myself a typical West Ham player because, you know, I wasn't easy on the eye and I was just lounging around, round-shouldered, smashing into people and, you know, having the odd argument on the field.
And earning a well-deserved nickname as well, Crossy.
Yeah, I don't know what that was. What was it?
Psycho, I used to sing it to you.
But yeah, I didn't really think I was a proper West Ham player in that respect, and so I wondered how the fans would take to me. But incredibly, the fans were so good to me over those 5 years I had.
You have got a West Ham scarf around your neck, and I understand that's the one that you had around your neck, which we're going to talk about, that famous day at Wembley 40 years ago.
Yeah, you can never really remember how they happened, but I think it's probably as we were going up the steps to collect our medals and people wrap a scarf around your neck and someone sticks a hat on your head. This is the scarf that someone put around me that afternoon, sorry. And yeah, I've just kept it ever since.
Obviously, we're going to talk about the final, but if it's okay, I want to go back to the third round. Now, I was at this game. I went as a fan and we played at the Hawthorns against West Brom. I don't know whether you remember the game, but I remember the game very well because of the performance of Phil Parkes, who had, I think, his best ever game as a West Ham goalkeeper. And, you know, my question is really, David, it's like you play West Brom, Orient, Swansea, Villa. You know, at what point did you think that this might be our year?
It was strange, really, Tom. I remember us coming back from one Saturday night from an away game on the coach, and it was the night of the FA Cup draw for the third round. And when we realised we'd got West Brom away, all the lads, like the heads went down a little bit. You know, because West Brom are a good side, they had some good players, and we thought, you know, a difficult game. If we can get through that, you know, and hopefully get a home draw or something, that'd be good. As it happened, a week later, I got a bad injury and I was out for 2 months. So that game you were talking about where Parksy did so well, I wasn't at that game. I was just rehabbing back at home because I'd done my knee. And I didn't actually return into the side until my first game back was the 5th round against Swansea. So, you know, I had a long time out from the injury was the 21st of December and the Swansea game would have been end of March, possibly. Middle of March. So I was out for a good 8 weeks and wondering if I would play again that season. So to get back in and play in the Swansea game, I think we won 2-0. Paul Allen and myself scored. And then I continued in the side until the final. But gradually, after we'd beaten West Brom in the replay, following Parks' fantastic display at the Hawthorns, and then the Orient game, gradually you think, oh, you know, this would be good. We don't usually get this far, or have we got this far, or can we get a bit further than we ever have? And then once we get to the sixth round, and you realise that there's only 8 teams left, and we've got Villa at home, which is what every player, and you'll know this, all you pray for really when the draw comes out is that you're at home. And we got Villa at home, and again, Villa was a terrific team. 12 months later, they won the European Cup, that same side that we beat. And it was a good game. That was a good old-fashioned cup tie, and Super Jock put the penalty away with about 5 minutes left. And then we're in the semi-final, and again, 4 teams left in the semi-final. Arsenal, Liverpool, Everton, and West Ham. And we were praying we wouldn't get Liverpool or Arsenal. We were praying we would get Everton. I'm sure Everton were praying that they would get West Ham. But that's how it panned out. And at that point, you kind of thought, maybe, wow, if we can get to Wembley. I think one of the things about playing in the cup final is most players' ambition, if you ask them, is to say, I'd love to play in the cup final. They don't often say, I'd like to win the cup.
Yeah.
It's playing the cup final. So in that respect, the semi-final itself is the most important game, because you win that and you're through, and you're part of that day. Even if it doesn't go well for you and you don't win the cup on the day, you have been there, your family's come down, you've been part of a fantastic tradition. And probably, I think, once we'd drawn Everton, and then we saw Liverpool and Arsenal playing about another 3 or 4 replays because, and tiring themselves out, we thought, maybe we've got a chance. I mean, obviously, stupidly, when there's only 4 teams left in it, you think it could be your year. But it was only at that point, I think, when it dawned on me that possibly we could win the cup.
My question really is, what do you remember about the night before? Because we're going to talk about the game, but the night before, Friday night, do you remember what you did, who you roomed with?
I roomed on my own, actually. I don't know why that was. I mean, I did have deodorant, so it might not have been that. I was a fairly quiet performer on the night before a game. I know a lot of the lads went to the Dogs. I think Dev and Bonzo and maybe even Trevor went to the Dogs. I just stayed in the hotel. I usually just read a book and then fell asleep. But because it was the cup final eve, it got to about 11:30, and I just thought I was really restless, and I walked along the hotel corridor and I spotted Parksy. He said, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "I can't sleep, Phil." I said, I'm just really wound up about tomorrow. He said, "Come with me." And he took me into his room. And I'd never drank the night before the game. I never drank. I couldn't afford to do that. I couldn't afford to be out there on a Saturday when I wasn't fully fit. But I'd never drank before the game. And Parksy ordered 4 pints of Guinness on room service. And we drank 2 each and just had a chat for about 45 minutes. And then I went back to my room and fell fast asleep. So that was my night before, so the first time I'd ever had a drink on the night before a match, and that was the cup final. So blame Parksy.
When did you find out about the tactical change? Because everyone talks about number 10s now and one up front and playing just behind the striker and all that. But John Lyall actually did that in the 1980 FA Cup final. You played up front on your own, and Pancho, Stuart Pearson, who was a really good player, he played just behind you. When did John actually tell you that was going to happen?
He told me, with about 15 minutes to go, so about 2:45, he just quietly said, "Dave, Stuart, I needed just a quick chat," and he took us to one side. And he told us then, he said, "Look, I'm thinking of just changing things. Dave, I want you to play up front on your own. Stuart, I'm going to withdraw you into midfield." And I was shocked, if you like, or... I mean, you know what it's like as a striker. You want to be a goal scorer. I wanted to do what I wanted.
And you used to playing with 2 up front in those days, wasn't it?
We played with 2 up front all season, and Stuart and I had a good combination. I think John had just worked out that something different might just upset Arsenal's plans themselves. So,
and did you trust him, Dave? Did you trust him? Did you think, this is a crazy idea, or did you think, no, I actually think that's a good idea?
Tony, if you knew 30 years ago that you were going to play in the cup final the next day, you'd be quite happy to play anyway, wouldn't you, on the field? And whatever John said, I'd go with, because he'd made me a better player, even though he signed me when I was 27. He made me a better player, and I did trust John implicitly. But the one big thing I do recall was I looked at Stuart and wondered whether he was as shocked as I was, and he wasn't. And I thought, John's told Stuart the day before,
Yeah.
or told him on the first day. And
He was
neither
clever
of,
like that, wasn't he?
yeah, neither of them would cough for that. I still ask. I mean, Stuart lives quite close to me up in Manchester even now, and I ask him about it, and he just laughs. But I'm sure John told Stuart. And I asked John later, years later, and said, what made you do that? And he said, well, I didn't think Arsenal would work out what we were doing, hopefully for half an hour, maybe even less, maybe even longer, but it would be something different, and it would be against what their plans were. But he did say something that really hit me. He just said, but I knew I could trust you to do that job. And that meant a lot to me, really, that he had thought what he could do to win the cup final, and he made me a big part of that. So, and the other thing was as well, that you hit it on the head. Stuart was a good player, Tom. He could play faced up. I mean, I was a back to goal player. I only faced their goal when the crosses came in, and I was going to get on the end of something. So I was a real back to goal player. But Stuart could play faced up. I couldn't. And I knew Stuart could play in that position. And to be fair, and I've said this to Stuart himself many times, I think that was the best game he had for the club.
Oh, Devinshire's round the back. Oh, right across, it's free. Driven in.
When Dev puts a cross in, Pat Jennings flicks the ball. Are you thinking, oh, here's my goal in the cup final here? And are you disappointed it didn't go in?
Yeah, absolutely. When it dropped to me, I knew it was a difficult one because it was dropping and I was going to have to stretch forward. And I mean, this sounds ridiculous because you couldn't think this through in the split second that it happened. But I just knew instinctively not to hit it hard because I thought if I go for it, I'll put it over the bar and it'll go into the stadium, into the fans. And I just thought, just keep it down, just keep it on target, and you never know, it might go in. And often they just do sneak in, don't they, off their foot, off the defender's foot or through someone's legs. So I just kind of toe poked it towards the goal and prayed that it would go in. Willie cleared it off the line. It went to Stu. Stuart smashed it, and instead of it going straight towards the goal, he kind of hit it across the face, and there was Trev to head it in. So, it works out in the end. But yeah, you're right. Like any goal scorer, and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, you just want to be the one who scores that goal and is the hero.
And Dave, what about the celebration? What do you remember, after the game, and what did you do that evening? And in particular, what do you remember about the victory parade? Again, I went on the Sunday when you went to Easter. What an incredible day that was. Yeah,
it was. Just going back to the day itself, I played at Wembley 7 years earlier for Norwich against Tottenham in the League Cup final, and people asked me afterwards about what had happened in the game, how did you, and I couldn't remember anything that had happened. It kind of was a blur, and it all went, and I'd heard people say that about big games.
A lot of players say that, yeah.
By, and I was so determined that the Norwich game in '73 against Tottenham, I didn't play particularly well. I didn't score. We lost, and I didn't enjoy any part of it. So I was determined on May the 10th, 1980, that I couldn't govern whether I'd score. I couldn't govern whether we won or not, but I could govern whether I enjoyed the day. And I was determined to enjoy the day completely. And I was determined also not to have a drink after the match. And I wanted to remember everything. I mean, Super Jock, for instance, who you know well, and who at that time never drank at all.
He was our foreign player, wasn't he, Ray Stewart? Because he's the last British team, and he was our foreign player.
Yeah, he was from another country, wasn't he? Ray didn't drink, but I think I wouldn't be exaggerating to say by 5:10 he drank a full bottle of champagne, and you can imagine what that does on an empty stomach.
Exactly.
So he was just out of the game completely, and I was determined that wouldn't happen to me. So I didn't have a drink until probably about midnight, and I wanted to remember the whole thing. And so I remembered our celebrations, Brian Clough being on Match of the Day, having to apologise about what he said about that. And then the next day, as you say, the parade past the town hall was just a fantastic occasion and the good thing about that was that we were able to share it with all those fans. It wasn't just about us; it was about the fans as well. And one thing that often gets overlooked is that we had another game the next night. We had to go to Sunderland and play at Roker Park the next night, of course, in a game where Sunderland won. They went up. And so we had to be a bit careful about how we behaved ourselves. It was just the whole weekend was fantastic.
you was there. Was it 5 years? I think you was at the Hammers.
Yeah, five
how
seasons.
do you sum up your career? And how do you look back on it?
Well, as I said earlier on, when I was a kid signing for Rochdale at 18 and just leaving school and not really thinking I was going to be a top level player or anything, I would never have believed that I'd finished a career with 600 goals and about 600 games and about 250 goals.
Yeah, fantastic.
If someone had said that to me when I was 18, I'd have probably laughed at them and said, no, not a chance. And to have played for the clubs that I played for as well. But I just worked out quite early on what I was. I knew what I wasn't, and I knew what I was. And I was a goal scorer like yourself. I was mobile. I wasn't quick. I wasn't quick like you and McAvenny. I was mobile, got around the park, battered around into defenders, made it difficult for them, and didn't care if I got hurt to score a goal. So I just knew what I was, and I worked on that in those 5 years at West Ham. And I think that's probably why the fans kind of quite like me, bearing in mind I wasn't a typical West Ham player.
And we've already touched on it. You've got your scarf, you've got your boots, you've got your kit. We've got the anniversary on the 10th of May. Are you going to have a Sunday dinner and wear your West Ham kit to celebrate?
I think I might do. I didn't realise it was a Sunday actually. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm going to do it, and I'll put a picture on Twitter and let everyone see it.
We look forward to it. Listen, David, I've got to say, as a kid, you was one of my heroes. I love watching you play up front with Pop and everything. And then you was really good to me as a young player arriving at West Ham Football Club. And I just want to thank you for giving up your time today and wish you good luck and all the best for the future. Thanks, David.
That's great. No problem. Good to talk to you. Take care.
Cheers, mate.